Hi, it's Gene, retired in Mexico, and I'm here with Professor Gumbo, and are starting a new series. This will be the second episode. 1971. These are going to be our favorite albums. And 71 was a pretty important year because it kind of launched singer-songwriters. And in terms of singles, a lot of people think it was the best year. So Jem and I are longtime friends from high school. He was my mentor when I was younger, and then over the years, we've developed some tastes that are individual. So we're kind of rekindling here, and we're kind of after many years, we're talking about this to see where we are. So we're inviting you in to hear us talk about this. We found with 1970 that we had some albums that overlapped. We had two albums that were exactly the same album at the same position. And then we had other albums that weren't even mentioned as honorable mentions by either one of us. And we had some omissions. I forgot to mention in the 1970 video, Jim, I was gonna mention this, but neither one of us mentioned All Things Must Pass by George Harrison.
It was a strong contender for me.
Yeah, we didn't have it even as an honorable mention. So it doesn't mean it's not a good album. It's just, but a lot of people, that would be absolutely top 10. So there's some subjectivity and some objectivity here. But we're basically going through and finding out where we've kind of grown and diverged over the years. It's been over 50 years that we've known each other, and I'm the student, but the student has now become his own guy, I guess. And so let me give you some context for 71 for our viewers, because it was an interesting year. There were some things that debuted in pop culture. So 1971 was the year that All in the Family debuted. This completely changed television. Norman Lear had a whole different style. It's also the year that NPR, National Public Radio, debuted. I think those were pretty important debuts in business. Starbucks was founded. Federal Express was founded. Southwest Airlines had their first flights. Evel Knievel jumped 19 cars. That was a big deal. I remember everyone was talking about Evel Knievel. Charles Manson was sentenced in California. He was actually sentenced to death, but the next year, California commuted all death penalty sentences. But yeah, that certainly had the public eye. The New York Times published the Pentagon Papers. The Nixon administration took us off the gold standard internationally, and some people would say we're still dealing with that. So yeah, we went off the gold standard in 1971. That was a big year in terms of financial history. There were major troop withdrawals from Vietnam. Jim Morrison of the Doors died that year. The first Glastonbury Festival was in 1971, and that's still going on. Gil Scott Heron released The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Many people consider that the first rap song. The Concert for Bangladesh was organized by primarily George Harrison. A lot of people think that was the first true benefit concert that would lead later to Live Aid and every other benefit concert that you can imagine. And some popular movies at the time were Fiddler on the Roof, The French Connection, Summer of 42, A Clockwork Orange, and Dirty Harry. All right, so I just wanted to give some context, and we're taking turns going first. What we're going to do is the professor is going to start this time. He's going to take his first pick. We're going to count them down 10 to 1, taking turns, and we're going to mention two songs from these albums that we consider favorites or quintessential. Please keep in mind, these are our favorites. We are not saying that this is a definitive list or that we are the ultimate taste makers of the universe. So relax. If you have a different opinion, that's fine. Just don't insult us. We've listened to a lot of music over the years, and this is where we're at. And then when we're done, we're going to mention some honorable mentions, usually around 5 albums that we like that did not get on here. So, Jim, it's your turn to start. I'll let you tell us about your number 10.
Okay. Well, um, those of you that have watched some of these shows before know what a fan I am of Van Morrison. And this album, it's it's an amazing album of riches. It's just that the albums from 71 are so great that I have nine that I would put in front of it. But many Van Morrison fans rate this a little lower than some of his other albums, but I don't. The album is Tupelo Honey, which is the best love album that Van ever did. And he was actually, you have Happy Van, which is really hard to find Happy Van because as great of a musician as he is, he's not really a happy man, but he was happy at this point. And he had hair that was probably as long as mine, and he had a beard, and he had a horse that he would lead through the wilderness with Janet Planet sitting on it. That was all posed, but still, he had just had a baby, um, Shanna, who Gene and I were both lucky enough to meet at the Guinness Flea. Um, and so, you know, Shannon Morrison was born in 1970, and in 1971, he actually put his baby with Janet on the cover with him. And so it's an album of domestic bliss. Okay, and there's not an unhappy song. There's not a grousing song on there. He did do a couple songs grousing about the music business at that time, but they weren't put on the album. They're on the Philosopher's Stone. Um, so he's he's either sweet or playful, bubbles, blah, 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 or rocking, but it's Van for people who want a happy van. And the two songs that I choose from it are, first of all, one of his best rockers, which definitely inspired early Bruce Springsteen, and that is Wild Night. Okay. And if you're lucky enough to get a um, one of the versions with bonus tracks, it has an extended version of Wild Night. So, really nice. And John Cougar Mellencamp did a cover of it, and I won't fault him for it, but it's not Van. So Wild Night, and then the other one is uh, the title track, Tupelo Honey, which I have come to believe, and I told Gene this, just having been a father of a daughter, 35 years old now, I can't believe that. But she Van, I really think, was writing about his daughter when he wrote, "She's as sweet as Tupelo honey. She's an angel of the first degree." One of the other things amazing about this, he sings those two lines. I haven't counted the number of times, but it almost, not an infinite number of times, but as many times as he can sing it. And what's interesting is every time he sings it, he puts emphasis on different words. He stretches out other lines. He never sings, "She's as sweet as Tupelo honey. She's an angel of the first degree." You can put them side by side if you want to record them. You're not going to hear them sing at the same time. And that's Van Morrison. It really is. He's a person who sings what he feels, not what his producer tells him to sing. So, uh, great album, great songs. My number 10.
Okay. Yeah, we're both big Van Morrison fans, and if you haven't checked it out, we've got a album ranking and songs ranking of just Van Morrison. We did a deep dive into his music. All right, my number 10 is an album that I think might be perfect. It's pretty damn close to perfect. And it's easy listening, which is not my normal style. Well, not easy listening, but easy pop. And that's Carole King's Tapestry.
Mhm.
And it's a universally acclaimed album. If you look at reviews of this album, nobody begrudges it. It's easy to dismiss. And why? Because like I've been doing this series of my 133 favorite artists. Carole King's not on my favorite artist list, you know? But you can have an artist that's not one of your favorite artists who just makes that one perfect album. Um, and there'll be one or two more of those as we go through the 70s. We're going to go all the way up through 79. And there are people who have made, they've just made a perfect album or a near perfect album. And Tapestry's it. I kept playing it for this. I said, "Are you sure you want to put Tapestry on here?" It feels like a well-worn glove. You know, we heard a lot of these songs on AM radio growing up, and they still sound pretty well. And you know what's funny? We were like in listening and doing some research on Todd Rundgren, you know, I came across that um, quote that he was the male Carole King, and he kind of bristled a little bit at that. But I'm listening to her album and I'm thinking, yeah, I enjoy her in the way I enjoy early 70s Todd Rundgren. Just a great craftsperson. And then there are songs like that, you know, that were older hits that she did for other people, like Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? I think that was the Shirelles. And that's great on here. So my picks are oh, by the way, Lou Adler produced this. It was really interesting. He's still alive. Um, he didn't produce a lot of albums, but he was a big name in show business. But I think he did a great job on this album. It sounds great. I'm going to go with the singles. It's Too Late, and I Feel the Earth Move. So those are my picks from Tapestry. But every song's a winner on here. Maybe
Those
my
are
least favorite, Smackwater Jack, maybe is my least favorite, but it's pretty much everyone's a home run.
Gene and I have a mutual friend who is a really good friend of mine, but a former student of mine also. But he would be like 38 now. Um, but he really likes a lot of classic rock. But anyway, EJ's mother, that is her favorite album. So she would be really happy to hear you say that. EJ
Oh,
actually
okay.
he took her to see Carole King one time in concert, and she was thrilled with it. Okay, so mom rock. Um, all right, my second favorite, not second, my number nine favorite from 1971 is Traffic's The Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys. Uh, in 1971 and 72, I would often listen to the radio when I would come home for lunch or during the summer, I would just have it on. And I had a little cassette player next to my radio. And if a song came on that I liked, I would record it. And of course, I would, because the song came on and it took me a while to get it set up, I would always have the beginning clipped off. But this was a song that I really loved, The Low Spark of High Heeled Boys. And it makes the album. I mean, it puts everything else on the album to shame, but it's Steve Winwood at his absolute best. And there are other great songs on there. It's just that this is the one that's fantastic. So obviously, I would pick that song as one of the best ones. Um, but the other is a song called Rock and Roll Stew, which
Hmm.
is probably the closest thing to early Traffic with Dave Mason. So, I wanted to give you a couple different possibilities. So the absolute number one, and then an almost random number two song from Low Spark of High Heeled Boys.
I think that's a great pick. Rock and Roll Stew, I think, is sung by Jim Capaldi.
It is.
And we've been raving about Winwood, but Capaldi happens to be an extremely talented drummer and musician, singer in his own right, and had his own solo career. And I, I think that's a great track. Yeah. So if it's not Winwood, so what? Good pick. And it gives you some diversity on that album.
Mhm.
So will remain to be seen where I'm at with that. So my number nine, which was an honorable mention, and at the last minute, I bumped an album and snuck it in there. It's Van Morrison's Tupelo Honey.
Okay.
It almost didn't make the cut. I like the album a lot, like it a lot. And you already spoke about it. My picks are the same two picks, Wild Night and Tupelo Honey. So as we did on the other video, since we're doing a playlist, if we have an album in common, we should try to get three tracks from it. I'm trying to think what else is on there. Is Moonshine Whiskey on there?
Yes.
What do you think about that pick?
That would be my third pick.
Okay. So let's go with Moonshine Whiskey as a third pick just for the Spotify playlist. But yeah, Tupelo Honey, great album. Of course, you can't stream it on Spotify. It's weird because it's on Warner Brothers and all the other Warner Brothers albums are on there, but for whatever reason, you cannot stream anything other than the two hits that we talked about because they're on the Essential Van Morrison. So why can you play those and not? Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I always have to listen to Tupelo Honey on YouTube. Now, I own the CD and I have a CD player. So why don't I just put the CD in? You know why? Because I'm lazy. Because I'm lazy. Anyway, number nine for me is Tupelo Honey.
Okay, my number eight. Now, those friends of mine might have wondered why I didn't really have much prog rock in for 1970, because prog began to come into its own a year or two later. There were great albums by prog bands, Emerson, Lake and Palmer's debut, early Yes stuff, but Vandergraaf Generator created one of their two masterpieces this year, and it was Pawn Hearts. And Pawn Hearts has one song that is absolutely indispensable, even though it is what my friend EJ and I call a slep sidelong epic prog song. Okay, and that is it takes up an entire side of an album, but that is A Plague of Lighthouse Keepers. And, an early review of Peter Hamill's voice said, Peter Hamill is a singer unlike any other. Peter Hamill plays his voice the way Jimi Hendrix played guitar. And if you want to hear that, listen to A Plague of Lighthouse Keepers. One time, Cindy, who was not into Vandergraaf as much as I am, and she still isn't, but she's more than she used to be. I was playing this album in the car, and the first verse, it's Peter Hamill. The second verse, Cindy said, "Who's the girl singing?" I said, "It's Peter Hamill." It's Hamill singing in a falsetto. So that is Pawn Hearts. Sorry, from Pawn Hearts. It's A Plague of Lighthouse Keeper. Lyrically, it's some of the best existential lyrics by any rock lyricist. It's basically the lighthouse keepers are people who live by themselves. They cannot make contact with other people in the world. Okay. Hamill did a lot of stuff about existentialism in there. So for those of you into philosophy, check out the lyric. And the other one is Man Erg. And Man Erg is probably one of the best shorter albums by Van der Graaf Generator, but he talks about how he is both a devil, an angel, and a refugee. And he has a verse for each one of them. And that's the Man Erg. And it's a very powerful rocking song. And if you've never heard Van der Graaf Generator, you should be ready for not hearing, um, like, don't hear a bass typically. Okay. It's basically a keyboard player, a drummer, a saxophone player, and Peter Hamill, who would usually play either piano or guitar. However, Pawn Hearts has on it Robert Fripp, also of King Crimson, on the guitar. He's part of that whole early prog thing. So Pawn Hearts, Plague of Lighthouse Keepers, and Man Erg.
Yeah, those seem like pretty clear picks from that album. It's a great album. Yeah, and Plague of Lighthouse Keepers. So that'll change our playlist, won't it? Because that'll be like 25 minutes. That'll be
You
like
know,
a half an hour of Vandergraaf.
if you want to, if the live album from '78 is available, there is a condensed version of it on there. I mean, it's live, it's not, but if you want to have a shorter version of it.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait for the Steven Wilson remix because he always breaks everything down into
He does,
such
yeah, that
pack.
that would be great if you could do that. Uh, but definitely you'd want to have the beginning and the ending.
Yeah, and that was great. All right, my number eight is a universally critically acclaimed album that has even been, according to one reviewer, I don't remember who it was, but this reviewer said this was the best album ever. And that's Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. It's such a universally acclaimed album. Yeah, even a website like Pitchfork, I think, gives it a 10.0. Yeah, what can you say? Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye broke the mold of Motown. Motown was great. What I would say is Motown, the songs were great on Motown. But, they would let several different bands record a song. And then, you know, so so Gladys Knight records I Heard It Through the Grapevine, becomes a minor hit. Marvin Gaye does it, becomes a bigger hit. So they would throw the song around to see, you know, where it would bite and where it would take. And, Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye came along and they really stepped out as individuals, as artists. And I kind of like that. I mean, I like good pop songs. Motown sounds great on the radio. But and I think they were fairly distinct. I mean, you could tell a Four Top song easily from a Diana Ross song. But what Marvin Gaye did more than anybody was revolutionary, really, to just take and do this sort of prog soul thing. It's phenomenal. Yeah, famously, people, there's arguments. He says Berry Gordy didn't like it. Berry Gordy said that's not true. I probably would believe Marvin Gaye because I'm sure in 1970 that this album baffled some people. But boy, you talk about albums that have aged well. This album just continues to sound better and better over the years. And then the lyrical content, unfortunately, is more spot on than ever before. Songs about the environment, the children, and the inner cities and the ghetto. Things you were talking in the first episode about how some things have not changed as much as people think they have. Yes, they've changed, but not to the degree that a lot of people think that, uh, it seems like I'm with you 100%. you go through history and you look at history and you go, oh yeah, things are pretty bad back then too. And Gay had his finger on the pulse. He sure did. This symphonic soul prog, really well produced. I think Marvin Gaye produced it himself. And it's a stone cold classic. And I'm going to go with, there were three singles from the album. I think those are my favorite songs. So I'm going to go with the title track, What's Going On, and Mercy, Mercy Me, The Ecology. So number 8, Marvin Gaye.
Okay, great choice. My number 7 is another early prog album and a classic. This is the Yes album by Yes. Now, Yes had already had uh, two albums under their belt, Yes and Time and a Word. But with this album is when Steve Howe joined on guitar. He replaced Peter Banks. And it still didn't have the keyboard player who was to become the fifth member of the quintessential Yes lineup. But we still had Tony Kaye on uh, keyboards, primarily on organ. Tony Kaye wasn't a synthesizer player as much, more of an organ player. But this is such a great album, especially song wise. The songs, the arrangements of the songs are great, which I believe most of the arrangements at this time were done by John Anderson, the singer, and Chris Squire, the bass player. Later on, Steve Howe began to throw in a little bit more. But this was basically these two. And there's a couple short tracks on here, but mostly they're epics. And the first one is a is the song that everybody knows by Yes, but not the single. It's the extended version. Um, I've seen All Good People slash Your Move. Okay. And almost anyone who listens to rock or classic rock knows this song from the radio stations. What is cool that a lot of people don't realize is that as they are singing, as John Anderson is singing uh, the chorus, in the background, Chris Squire is singing, All We Are Saying Is Give Peace a Chance.
Hmm.
And you know, if you really listen, you can hear that. So, I mean, did the Beatles influence? Yes, of course they did. The other song is Starship Trooper, which was named after a Robert Heinlein um, novel, which was made into a movie later. But this is really about Vietnam. And so you have Starship Trooper, and I've seen All Good People.
Good picks. And by the way, I saw that movie and I didn't like it.
You know, a lot of people took the movie seriously. They didn't realize that it was satirical. That, I mean, it was done in a deadpan kind of way. And Verhoeven he was making fun of the militaristic aspects of the United States.
Yeah, I just didn't like there was a scene where they were like sucking the brains out of this guy's head. And I was just like,
Ah,
and I'm not that squeamish, but those spider creatures, I've seen a lot of violent films that I'm okay with, like Straw Dogs and Clockwork Orange, but man, I hate violence for violence sake. And it didn't feel like it moved it. But anyway, we're digressing, but
I will
uh,
say that one of the ways that we're different, I love body horror. Okay. I
you love what?
really love body horror. It's a branch of mostly science fiction that has to do with distortion, destruction of the human body.
Hmm.
And David Cronenberg is famous for body horror. Did you ever see The Fly?
No, I don't want to see it.
Okay.
And see, I'm not, like my friend the other day, he cut his foot and he lost like 2 pints of blood in his apartment. And I'm walking in his apartment and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Or I filmed a scene with real cow blood. They were throwing cow blood on me. I'm like, I'm fine, and then somebody's head explodes and I don't want to see that. I don't know why some things make me squeamish and others don't, but anyway. Yeah, I think you and I are different on that. But anyway, we're digressing. Let me get to number 7, unless you want to keep talking about it.
No, no, just if any of your viewers love body horror and want to recommend some body horror movies, I'm always game for some. Let me just say I'm not into um, slasher films, okay? I'm into science fiction, fantasy body horror, where stuff that would not normally happen is happening. That's a degree separated from the reality of it. I don't want torture porn. I don't like torture porn.
Yeah, I don't either. That was my problem with a film that you like a lot is 1984 with John Hurt. I had a really hard time with the torture scenes. But yeah, anyway, we'll talk about
You
that
mentioned
another
you
time.
mentioned the head blowing up. Um, David Cronenberg scanners
Yeah.
about people with psychic powers, and yeah, uh, they're able to make the heads of other people blow up.
Yeah, I was like, ugh. Anyway. My number 7 is an album I don't need to listen to ever again as long as I live. But it was one of the first 5 albums I bought. And the pleasure it's given me over the years is undeniable. It's Led Zeppelin 4. So, with the guy carrying the sticks, one of the best selling albums of all time. Um, and Led Zeppelin has aged pretty well with the newer generations seem to like Led Zeppelin and appreciate them. Um, I, I don't know. It's really objectively a perfect album, and it was my entryway into Zeppelin. And Zeppelin's still a great band. I just have to be a little objective here. Stairway to Heaven, probably the most played song on FM radio in my lifetime. Right up there with AC/DC's Back in Black, or, you know, you think about the songs that get played all the time. Yeah, I don't ever need to hear Stairway to Heaven again. Uh, but it's a great album. I can't argue. It's perfectly produced, perfectly played. You got, Bonham is now considered one of the quintessential drummers, along with, Neil Peart and Phil Collins and other people that are considered the great drummers of the era. So, yeah. So my picks, I think everybody knows this album, so I don't need to talk about it. Really hard to pick 2 tracks, but I'm going to go with Black Dog and When the Levee Breaks because they kind of feature different members of the band, except maybe I'm cutting John Paul out a little bit. He's really more prominent on the Battle of Evermore is really sort of John's song, but we'll go with When the Levee Breaks and Black Dog. Your turn.
Okay, my number 6 album is, I believe it's still the favorite of my friend Roxanne, and that is the follow-up to uh, a Tumbleweed Connection, and it's Madman Across the Water. Now, Elton by Elton John. Uh, Elton has said that he didn't like the vocals on this album. He felt his vocals were pretentious. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I think it's great. If there's any weakness that might drop it below a 10.0, it's that a couple of the songs are not quite up to ultimate classic Elton John. Okay. Um, and I think that things like Holiday Inn and all the nasties. Um, but but the two songs that I love the most on Elton John, by the way, it's a very string laden album. Okay.
Right.
And that's one reason that some people don't like it because, Elton was really into putting strings on it at the time. But if you ever watched Almost Famous, you know the song uh, Tiny Dancer.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was a song written by Bernie Taupin, to his girlfriend at the time, who he married, and that was Maxine. A lot of people think it's a song about a prostitute. It's not, but she was a groupie, which is like halfway to a prostitute. So that was that's Tiny Dancer, but it's beautiful. It just every line in it is great. And then the next one is Levon, which is a bit more rocking, and his name was Levon, and he shall be a good man. And I would have said Madman Across the Water, that song. However, I have a preference for the earlier version of it he did with Caleb Quay playing guitar on it, which is an extra track on Tumbleweed Connection. So,
Was that Caleb or Mick Ronson that played on it?
no, that was Callum. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Maybe it was Mick Ronson. Maybe
Because I
we'll
thought
have
he
to
did
check.
a song with Mick. I thought he did a song with. Anyway, I'm
Maybe
going
he
off
did.
memory.
Yeah, no, no, it was Caleb who played on the Madman album. I think you're right. It was Mick Ronson. Yes, I stand corrected. It was Mick Ronson on that one, David Bowie's guitarist at the time. Okay, so Tiny Dancer and Levon,
Levon.
and if I were to choose a third one, it would be Madman Across the Water.
I think I like your comments because I think it's not my favorite Elton John album, but it might be Paul Buckmaster's masterpiece album. I mean, I think his string arrangements, especially on the two songs that you mentioned, are just to me they're just masterful. I like the strings on here. Yeah, good good review, very good review. Thank you. So my turn. So now that was your number six.
That was my number six. Yes.
So my number six, it's going to semi surprise you because you know I like the blues, but I gotta really go through the history here. My number six is At Fillmore East by the Allman Brothers Band.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to say about this album is, boy, I did not like jam bands growing up in high school and going through college. This was not my bag at all. I didn't like noodling. I didn't like noodling. That's how I heard it. I first heard this album, bunch of noodling. Um, the Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers. And there was a lot of it. There was a lot of jam bands in the 70s. Yeah, it's my least favorite music. I like concise, smart pop songs. So it's been interesting for me for this album to just kind of creep up on me slowly over the years. And in listening to it for this project, it's just brilliant. It's absolutely a brilliant album. The playing is in another stratosphere. You got the double drummer thing going on and double guitar leads and Greg Allman's really soulful voice. And you've got some covers on here. But these guys, when they did the Fillmore East concert, and here we go again, same as Carole King. Allman Brothers Band are not a top artist for me. They're just not. They're not a top 100 artist for me. But they made a perfect album. 10.0. This at the Fillmore East, it just continues to grow on me year after year after year. I knew people that loved this album. They'd be like, "Really? You don't like you don't like really? You got to listen to the Allman Brothers." And yeah, crept up on me. Probably people like my friend Stan really had a big influence on me, but I didn't always agree with them. But I think this album is just pure musical genius. And maybe in terms of composition, it, I don't know if these guys were 10.0 composers, but man, they could play it. So my favorite songs on here, the ones I'm going to recommend, are In Memory of Elizabeth Reed and Whipping Post. So guess what, Jim? That's going to be about half an hour
Yeah.
on my playlist too. But In Memory of Elizabeth Reed and Whipping Post. Those two songs are just, uh, yeah. It opens with Statesboro Blues, which is an old, not Blind Willie McTell, but uh, st no, I think it was Blind Willie McTell. But anyway, great, just great album all the way through. Yeah, that's it.
Number five, next to Van Morrison, probably my favorite overall artist of the last 50 plus years, David Bowie. And I noticed that neither Gene or I chose his 1970 album, The Man Who Sold the World. But now you're going to start seeing Bowie albums coming up quite a bit for a while from me. And Hunky Dory. Hunky Dory, Bowie, if you're familiar with him, he was always trying new things. And one of the things that he was trying here was to do kind of a singer-songwriter, piano-based album. Okay, a little anecdote that you guys might find interesting. Uh, Rick Wakeman, who had been playing with the Strawbs, keyboard player, uh, he had quit the Strawbs and was looking for another job. On exactly the same day, um, he got a call from uh, his management. I think it was his management, but it was to join Yes. The other thing was he was offered by Bowie to be Bowie's keyboard player. Okay. And he probably, being a somewhat, I've always figured Rick Wakeman's sort of a mercenary soul. He probably figured he'd make more money as a member of a band than as a backup band. But history was made. He chose Yes. But he said he went in to play. The reason Bowie asked him was because he went in and listened to these tracks that Bowie had laid down. And Mick Wakeman, Rick Wakeman is on record as saying, I've never heard a whole album's worth of perfect tunes before. He said every single song was amazing. So he plays the piano on, and he'd been with Bowie before. He played with Bowie before on, he played harmonium, I believe it was, on Space Oddity, but he was a piano player. And so he played on this album, and his playing has a lot to do with how great the album is. And it's Bowie, but it's not rocking Bowie yet. It's folk singer songwriter Bowie with several tributes. And so uh, the first song that I'm going to choose is my absolute favorite David Bowie song. If somebody says to me, what is the best David Bowie song? I don't even have to think about it. It's Life on Mars. Okay. And it's great because Rick Wakeman puts a little thus sprak Zarathustra at the very end of it, you know. But it's Life on Mars by David Bowie. And then the other one, it became sort of a trademark song for Bowie. And it's not, when I chose my 30 favorite Bowie songs, this wasn't on there. And yet it's a great song, and that is Changes, changes, turn and face the strange. So two great songs from a great album, Hunky Dory, David Bowie.
Great review. And I think when you said Rick Wakeman played the harmonium, did you mean the mellotron?
The Mellotron, yes, yes.
But I like what you said because Bowie played the stylophone, and together the stylophone and the mellotron sound like a harmonium.
Yes, they do. Well, thanks for saving me. Yeah, yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, it was they didn't know many people in 69 who could play the mellotron. And then I read that Wakeman had never played one before.
Really?
Yeah, and he just said like, yeah, I can play it. So then he just figured it out. So that was his debut. But anyway, my number five, David Bowie, Hunky Dory, my songs, Changes, Life on Mars. Your turn.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know what, though, since we want to do a third song, I'm going to pick the Bewlay Brothers. Is that
Bewlay
okay?
Brothers. Yes, Bewlay Brothers was a great song. Absolutely.
But not only did we converge, same album, same position, same songs.
Yep. Yep. Not surprising. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen too often, but I knew that it would occasionally because we have so much of the same musical background, especially in the 70s. Okay. You say that I was your mentor, but we actually had a mutual influence thing going on. We kept sharing music. And I don't know if Gene's mentioned this before, but he would come over to my house and I would take the records, the two or three records, or actually the 20 or 30 records that I had bought since he last saw me a week ago. And
Yeah.
I would put them on and he would have to guess what they were. And then he would do the same with me. But it was more easier for him because there were only two or three. But I was, buying records like crazy back then.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, okay. So number four. This is an album that I appreciate what you said about it, but I don't agree with you. It's Led Zeppelin 4 because so far I've never grown tired of this album.
Okay.
And uh, the and I've never grown tired of Stairway to Heaven. I think Stairway to Heaven is a stone cold classic. And it's just every song on here is really great. Great. The good thing is that our two songs are not the same that we would choose. Um, you chose When the Levee Breaks, and me
White
too.
Dog.
Yeah. So When the Levee Breaks, which is an old, you know, Delta blues song, and it's so great at the beginning where Robert Plant, who when he wanted to, he could play a mean harmonica. Oh boy, I said, oh boy, come back here, goddamn no. And it's like, wait, this is an old blues man. Robert Plant was quoted as saying, I always loved the old bluesmen, but I was something of a Nancy boy, and that's what my voice was like. So that's how the voice that I, came up with sounded like. But there's also John Bonham's drums that are the hammer of the gods on this song.
Yeah.
Okay. Boom, 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 boom. And there's stories about how he recorded that in a uh, stairway to heaven, obviously. Just joking about that. The other one is, so I told you, Stairway to Heaven. Which, what can I say about it except that they like it on Wayne's World too. And Hart did a fantastic version. Didn't equal Led Zeppelin. And for people who type that was better than Zeppelin's, no, it wasn't. They left out an entire verse. So no, it wasn't. But still, at the Kennedy Center, when Led Zeppelin was inducted, Hart did a dynamite version of it. And what was great was that when they go back, and show the band, John Bonham's son Jason is drumming, and Jason wore a derby hat like his father would often wear. And then they had a whole choir of soul singers who were all wearing the derby hats, and it was pretty cool. But nothing replaces the original, unless it's a live album, a live version when Robert Plant says, "Anybody remember laughter?"
Yeah. I like the live version.
Yes, the live version is excellent.
My number four is another artist that's not a top 100, maybe not even a top 150 artist for me. I mentioned Carole King, Allman Brothers. Got another one. Yeah, and they're all top 10 albums. But I have got to go with Rod Stewart's Every Picture Tells a Story. My absolute favorite Rod Stewart album, one of my favorite albums, period, and perfect. Every song I love. Uh, I absolutely worship and adore every song on this album. And yeah, if I saw Rod Stewart at a restaurant here, there's lots, believe it or not, there's lots of celebrities that come to my town here. If I saw him, I probably wouldn't even go talk to him. I wouldn't care to. But this is a perfect album. Every picture tells a story. Really hard to pick two tracks from here. Really hard. Uh, so, for example, just listening to the drumming on I Know I'm Losing You, that's some of the most killer drums. And the production, which, by the way, is by Rod Stewart. He produced this album. It's great. That ragtag feel of the Faces and Ron Wood, it's very Stonesy, you know. I love it. This back when Rod Stewart mattered, when he was cool, before he sold out. You
Right, I
know,
I totally agree with you.
yeah, he became one of the most disappointing acts there. Yeah. So anyway, the tracks I'm going with are the title track, Every Picture Tells a Story, and then I got to go with Maggie May. Great
Okay.
single, still sounds good today. Here's an album I've never tired of ever. So my number four is, yeah, believe it or not, Rod Stewart.
I came really close to choosing that, but I didn't. But for the same reasons that you said, it's when Rod was cool. Um, and I don't know how much of a joke it was, but Jeff Beck was talking about um, Led Zeppelin and the rivalry between early Led Zeppelin and the Jeff Beck group. And Jeff Beck said, well, if anything gave Jimmy an edge, it was he had Robert Plant, and I only got Rod. Um, so but I'm sure that was friendly, brotherly, ragging. Okay, next, my number three, Marvin Gaye. What's going on? In my opinion, the greatest soul or R&B or whatever you want to call it album ever made. Let's just go with one of the greatest albums ever made. What's going on? Um, Socially conscious, and you know, I I don't know if Barry Gordy really didn't like it or not. There's a story that might be apocryphal that remember, well, you may not know, but Marvin Gaye was married to Barry Gordy's sister, and I was going to say married to Barry Gordy's wife. He was married to Barry Gordy's sister,
Anna.
and
Yeah, Anna.
he was part of the stable of Motown artists. But he presented Barry Gordy with the album, and Barry Gordy said, "No, it's not going to sell. I'm vetoing it." And Marvin said, "Come on, Barry, we're in-laws." He said, "No." He said, "I'll tell you what. If it doesn't sell, I won't take any royalties from it. You have everything from it. And Barry Gordy said, all right. And of course, it became Marvin's best-selling album ever. So I would choose, I almost would have chosen the same two songs you did. Definitely What's Going On and Mercy, Mercy Me. But there's another song that I just really love from the album. And that is the whole, no, sorry, Inner City Blues, Make Me Want to Holler. Okay.
Thank you.
And those are like the bookends of the album. So Inner City
Yeah.
Blues makes me want to holler, but it's hard to choose because the album is almost like a two-sided suite where one song just leads into the next. So that's my number three.
Wow. Yeah. I knew you liked that album, but and I don't remember us really I don't remember us really listening to this album back when it came out. I think it took a few years for me to come. In fact, I know it did. I don't think I even heard it till later in the 70s, but I sure love it now. Okay, my top three, and I'm only going to talk about number three right now, but my top three are all classic rock albums. And very male. I know my 1970 list was very male, but it's just that year. By the way, I looked at a lot of people's top albums for 1970, and yeah, and even female critics were putting male artists up for their favorite albums. It's just like Jem and I were talking about before we recorded that, it's like a wine. You just have years. 1970 is a year. And then in 71, you start to get a lot more women. My top list is kind of male and kind of not. I will explain. But number three is the Rolling Stones' Sticky Fingers, which would be my second favorite Rolling Stones album. Um, this is the period I prefer, is this 70s period of the Stones. Um, I think Sticky Fingers is a great album. It sounds great. And that's interesting because it actually is from a couple different years. Um, this album was recorded, I believe, in 69, 70, and 71. So it shouldn't sound as homogenous, if that's the right word, as it is. Because I think like Sister Morphine is from 69. And then they went down to Muscle Shoals and they recorded Brown Sugar and You Gotta Move, I think. Um, they went down there and then they went to England or whatever and recorded the rest of the album. It it almost shouldn't work on paper, but it sounds seamless to me. And here's a real hot take. Live, live, I think Ron Wood's the best second guitarist they ever had. But man, in the studio, I love Mick Taylor. Mick Taylor, that Mick Taylor period is my favorite studio Stones. I've got a DVD of the Stones. It's magnificent. It's post Mick Taylor, Ron Wood, Keith Richards are fantastic. But yeah, this this is kind of really the Mick Taylor album. A lot been written about it. So what are the songs that I pick? Now, most people would pick, I bought the 45. The 45 was Brown Sugar. And then, of course, Wild Horses was a big hit. And so that's the two that you would think, but I'm kind of going with slightly deeper tracks. So I'm going to go with Sway because that's pure Mick Taylor genius. Yeah, I could go with that one or Can't You Hear Me Knocking because they're both great guitar pieces. But I'm going to go with Sway. because that really features Mick Taylor doing some slide guitar, and it's great. And then Bitch. Bitch is just a really fun song. So Sway and Bitch, Sticky Fingers.
Okay, my number two album is like almost tied with the number one because both of these are like for me the two best albums from 1971, and that is Jethro Tull Aqualung. Now, Ian Anderson has argued for years that this was not a concept album. And he said that got so angry at people calling it a concept album that he decided to make the mother of all concept albums, which we'll talk about in 1972. But the fact is that there are two concepts. All of the songs on side one are united in looking at the working class and the underprivileged working class of England at the time. And that it even in on the lyric sheet, they give that set of songs a title, and it's Aqualung. Okay. And it begins with the song Aqualung, okay, which has that incredible riff that our friend Gene, EJ, he pointed out to me, because I'm not into music that much, that the dun 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 that's the basically those are the chords that the blues plays. They're blues chords,
Mm.
and so I mean I didn't realize that. Co-written with his then wife, but it has a combination of really riff rocking and then kind of a megaphone style, almost folky style to it. Um, and it's just every time I hear that dun 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 dun, I want to go. So great song. Now, Gene, the next, I was really struggling with what to get next. And because you're going to put on your 1970 playlist that incredible version of My God, I'm going to
No, because
skip.
it's no, it's honorable mention. That was honorable
Oh, it's an
mention.
honorable mention. Okay. Well, then I'm just going to go with My God.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I forgot that. So yeah. So I will go with which is by the way, it's the second side of the album is called My God because it's all songs about religion that Ian Anderson is doing. Okay. So Aqualung and My God. That's my
Great
number
pick.
two.
I can not argue with that at all. Yeah. Aqualung, did it make my top 10? Well, you're going to find out. So my number two, I think it'll surprise you. Not that I like it, but that it's number two, or even that it made my top 10. You talk about an album that's aged well. This album was completely panned when it was released. Critics hated it. A lot of people I knew hated it. But now, in the era of indie rock, there's no doubt that Paul and Linda McCartney's Ram is just, it just sounds so friggin' modern. It doesn't sound like 71. It sounds much later. This is absolutely a blast to listen to. He tried to do it on McCartney. That's a good album. I didn't mention it in the 1970 list. I like McCartney, but it's a little flawed. Um, Ram hits all the right notes for me. I honestly like every song on here. I think it's a 10.0, and it's just nuts. Parts of it parts of it he just goes wild. Other parts are sweet. Opens with Too Many People. There's a song that's aged well. Too many people reaching for a piece of cake. Um, we were talking about the things that were kind of in the water in the 70s, and certainly the environment. And remember the population explosion? Remember that phrase? You don't hear
Yeah.
that anymore. You know why? Because it exploded. So now it doesn't make any sense. But um, So my picks from here are Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, even though it's kind of Beatles-ish. Maybe I should have picked backseat in my car. But anyway, I'm going to go with Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, and the completely unhinged Monkberry Moon Delight, which I never get tired of listening. Hey, I got a piano up my nose. What? That song is so nuts. And when I said this is a male list, well, this is the only album co-credited to Linda McCartney, and she's all over this album. She sounds great. She's having fun. Um, you hear her most prominently on Long Haired Lady, but you got some ukulele on Ram On, and I don't know. It's sort of the blueprint for indie rock, and I love it. Your turn.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Not really, because many people would agree with me. But in my opinion, this is the greatest rock and roll album of the 70s. Okay. Rock and roll, notice I say. And that is Who's Next by The Who. Um, the only way it could be better is if some of the extra tracks were on there as well, which if you buy the right, version of it, they are. But I mean, any album that begins with Baba O'Reilly, by the way, speaking of, it's Meher Baba and Terry Riley, but with that, any album that starts with that and then ends with Won't Get Fooled Again, bookends for a great album. Um, Townsend was at the peak of his writing ability. Daltrey was at the peak of his singing. Some people might argue, maybe on Quadrophenia, but I'll stay with this. Um, if there's if there's any problem, there are no problems with it. Let me talk about how it was made. Um, Townsend, after Tommy, wanted to do the ultimate concept album. It had gone to the ambition and drugs had gone to his head. And so he began working on this amazingly complex project called Lifehouse. And he wrote dozens of songs for it, many of which his demos were released later. And some of them showed up on Who's Next. But this is not Lifehouse. This is the remains of Lifehouse, um, produced by Glyn Johns, and it's like the production. I will say qualifiably is fantastic. The reason I say qualifiably is because it depends on who has produced it. There was a version for a while that was produced by uh, Townsend's brother-in-law, and he took the Daltrey's scream at the end and put it all the way into distortion levels. And you hear it sounds like the speakers are crackling and going to come up. And that sounds kind of cool, but it's not the way I first heard the album.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's a lot of songs on there that I would choose because it's my favorite rock and roll album of the 70s. But I would choose the two that I mentioned, Baba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again.
That's your number one.
That's my number one.
My number one is Who's Next, and
I knew it had to be.
my songs are Baba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again. So we completely converged, and since we're doing three songs, if we have two, I love songs like Bargain. God, Bargain is a great song. Going Mobile, Getting in Tune. So many great songs. My Wife is hilarious. But I guess you got to go with Behind Blue Eyes.
I would say so. Yes, that
So,
that would be my
and
third choice.
lyrically, now that I know what that song's about, uh, because I had a certain interpretation growing up, it actually was the first 45 that I ever bought, but I bought it for the flip side. I liked the song My Wife. Yeah, believe it or not. So, but Behind Blue Eyes is, about a criminal, really, and from a first person view, it's really brilliant. In terms of production, I agree with you. The remastered version, the clarity on there, you can just hear it. You can, Olympic Studios, where most of the album was recorded with Glenn Johns, as you mentioned. It's just superior sound. And so one time I went to see in Tucson, Arizona, I was down there vacationing, and Joan Jett and the Blackhearts were playing. So we went to see Joan Jett. She was great, flicking sweat on everybody in the front row, very punk. But I bring it up because they played Won't Get Fooled Again as the, introductory song to get everybody in the mood. And they had a speaker system. It was state of the art. And that song has never sounded better to me than Waiting for Joan Jett to come on stage. This sound system was absolutely, like when you go to a audiophile store and they play you their high-end system, right? This is just like, and it was loud and clean. It was loud and clean, and it was great. And then, to talk about how great songs are on the Secret Policeman's Ball, Townsend drank a fifth of brandy or whatever and got on there with John Williams and did Won't Get Fooled Again on acoustic guitar. And I like that version almost as much as this one, even without Keith Moon's brilliant drumming. Well, that's another thing. Talk about production. Keith Moon's drum sounds on here, like when he comes in on Won't Get Fooled Again. God, it just has such punch, doesn't it?
Yeah, people talk about Keith Moon was such a sloppy drummer. He was, but everything he did was right. Okay. Yeah, it was sloppy, but he made sloppy sound right.
Yeah, and he was different in the studio because, like in '70, we mentioned Live at Leeds. He sounds like the Keith Moon, like Animal from the Muppets, right? From Sesame Street. Animal is based on Keith Moon. Did you know that?
I'm not surprised to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. Animal would just bang on the cans and all that kind of stuff, and so yeah, I think it's brilliant. So yeah. Anyway, who have you? Well, let's go ahead and do our honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions. Okay. Joni Mitchell, Blue. Wonderful, wonderful album. The favorite album of all time, I believe, of uh, your ex-wife, Gene. Um, Maybe, and she at least she told me that she loved that album so much. Uh, Next was probably the greatest quirky pop singer-songwriter ever, Harry Nilsson, and the album is Nilsson Schmilsson. Then the first Genesis album that I heard, and I fell in love with it immediately. And I bought a copy for Cindy, and we went home and listened to it. Nursery Crime by Genesis. Okay. Is it the best album by Genesis? No, but it's among them. Then the band Rock of Ages. This is an album that kind of puts together everything that was good about the band as a live album, and it was played on New Year's Eve, and it's a lot. And Bob Dylan came out and played with them, which happened several times. And some people say that it's kind of like a dry run some years early for The Last Waltz. But I consider the two albums very, very different. This one's more edgy, this one's more bluesy, and it's more focused on the band. And if you're looking for a best of the band that's not a studio best of, Rock of Ages. And then this next one, very important to me because it was the my introduction to prog and my introduction to classical music both. And it's Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Pictures at an Exhibition, which it's the album that got me interested in progressive rock. I didn't know what it was called at the time, but Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And then because it's an adaptation of a piece by Mussorgsky, it got me into that and I got into classical music. So this album is seminal in my musical taste. Um, I would like to point out just a little fun aside. My parents had very, very popular in the 60s, um, a multi-cabinet stereo player. It looked like a piece of furniture, had speakers on the side, and it had a record player. And I really was not supposed to be using it, but they were out of
Yeah.
town. And you could turn up the volume a lot louder there. So I put on um, this album, and during the Great Gates of Kiev, it blew out the speakers. Yeah, and like, what am I going to tell my mom? It just totally blew out the speakers. So I'll always remember that Pictures at an Exhibition blew out the speakers. I did tell my mother about it finally just a few years ago, when she had become totally senile, and she had Alzheimer's and wouldn't know what I was talking about. So I confessed to her at that time. I know that that's awful and ugly of me, but that's what I do.
You waited until she couldn't remember what you
Yeah.
said.
Guess what, Mom? You remember your stereo being blown out and the speakers being blown out? Yeah. Well, that was me. I was playing a Emerson, Lake and Palmer record. Oh, well, that's fine.
I did something similar. And then is that all of them, or did you have one more?
That's all of them. Yes.
Okay, so was that four or five?
That's five. Blue, Nilsson Schmilsson, Nursery Crime, Rock of Ages, and Pictures at an Exhibition.
Okay, and mine, that's a good pick. Pictures in exhibition. I forgot about that one, but that's actually, I shouldn't admit this to you, but I think it's my favorite Emerson Lake and Palmer album.
I wouldn't be surprised. And the current editions of it have a shortened studio version of it that they did.
Oh, okay, and they do the Nut Rocker on there too. Yeah, it's a great
Right,
album.
right.
Um, Great album. Okay, so I have five, like exactly like you, just by coincidence. And I'm going to start with the one that I bumped at the last second to get the Van Morrison in there. This was my number 9 album, and I bumped it to number 11. An album I didn't listen to when it came out at all. I didn't discover it for years, but the Beach Boys, Surf's Up, love this album. Yeah, love it. One of my two favorite, like right up there with Pet Sounds. This is it's great. I love this weird period of Brian Wilson. This kind of late late 60s up through here. Love this period. Then I got John Lennon, Imagine. Very good album. Very good album. But just didn't make my top 10. Joni Mitchell, Blue, I'm with you. That's funny. We both had that in honorable mentions, and most people would have this in their top 10. We obviously both loved the album. It's pretty close to perfect, but it's outside my top 10. Then I have T-Rex, Electric Warrior, Tony Visconti's brilliant production on here, and Traffic, Low Spark of High Heeled Boys. Boy, that one hurt. That one hurt to leave that one out of my top 10. I love it. But anyway, so those are my honorable mentions.
Some
Who
great
have you
choices
seen?
there.
What's that?
I said some great choices there, Gene.
Yeah. Do you like the Beach Boys? Have you listened to that?
Yes, yes. I haven't listened to that for a while, but it's a very melancholy album.
Yeah.
And are you aware that Neil Young used some of Surf's Up on his uh, Journey Through the Past album?
No, if I knew that, I forgot it.
Yeah, on his soundtrack, he has the
Oh, okay. Yeah, when it was okay. Who have you seen in concert from your list?
okay. Well, Van Morrison, of course. Uh, I've seen Peter Hamill of Vandergraaf Generator, and were you with me at that show?
Yeah, we went to that
Yeah,
together. It was a great show.
and and Hamill said very clearly to the audience. I mean, I was just fooling with him, but he said, "I have a set list here, and I'm not deviating from it." Okay, so here's my set list. And so then, as when he was between songs, I said, "Do a Plague of Lighthouse Keepers," which isn't that unusual because he had done it live before. But he picks up his list and goes, um, and Elton John, seen several times. David Bowie, saw several times. I just missed seeing Led Zeppelin. I could have gone, but I didn't. Jethro Tull, seen a couple times. And The Who, never saw. Uh, and from the top 10, right? Not from the honorable mentions.
Or anything. Yeah, your honorable mentions as well.
All right. Let's see. Were there any from Genesis? And yes, I did see them. Envy to all you prog heads there, um, in the Peter Gabriel incarnation of the
Yeah.
band. Um, and and I saw Emerson, Lake and Palmer in 1977.
Yeah. So and we went to that show together
Yeah.
with the opening band was a pre Steve Perry Journey.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Yeah. With Ansley or Ainsley Dunbar on drums. But yeah, I have seen, so I saw some of those shows with you. I mentioned earlier that I saw The Who post Keith Moon. I've seen the Stones once, their Bridges to Babylon tour, much later. Bowie, I've seen 4 times. Led Zeppelin, I talked about how we saw Page Plant. I had, like you, I had tickets that I purchased for the physical graffiti tour. And Robert Plant broke his leg in an auto accident in Greece. We had to get a refund. I kind of wish that I'd kept the ticket stub. It might be worth more than we paid for the ticket. I've seen Van Morrison and I have seen Steve Winwood, but not Traffic. The bucket list person I wish I had seen more than anybody else is Joni Mitchell. Really wish I'd seen her. Of course, she played this year in California, but I was like, it's not the same. That Joni ship has sailed. So that's it. I think we're done with the video. The biggest omission, I mentioned that in 70, it was probably All Things Must Pass. People watching this channel, I already know. The biggest omission that neither one of us mentioned was Paranoid by Black Sabbath. Um, and I don't remember if Masters of Reality came out the same year or next year. But I will say we've got a little bit of bias here for prog rock and punk and different things like that. And in high school, you were either a Deep Purple or a Black Sabbath fan, and I was more of a Deep Purple fan and still prefer Machine Head and Made in Japan to any Black Sabbath. But I know that's sacrilege today because Black Sabbath has aged well and become a really important band. I would think that's probably the grossest omission by the two of us, I would say. Can you think of anything else that we overlooked?
Just from 1970, I regretted not putting Deep Purple in rock.
Yeah, it's a great album. Um, I love Deep Purple and Rock, Machine Head, and Made in Japan. I love that era right there, the Ian Gillan. I know you had some Ian Gillan solo material that you used to own, and he also did Jesus Christ Superstar, right?
Hmm.
And you
Yeah,
and you had a recording, I think, of that. And so we are fans of that, but I think honestly, if we really self-assess here, we probably just are not as much metalheads as some other people are. Would you agree with that?
I would. Yes. And another one that I regretted leaving off is yes, Fragile, the first one with Rick Wakeman.
Yeah, I left that off too because some of the little things, cans and Brahms and the fish thing, whatever it's called, and
Hmm.
each one of them does their little solo piece. I like the album with outside of that, right? I love
Right.
Heart of the Sunrise and Roundabout, South Side of the Sky. So, um, yeah, I docked it. And you know what album did not make my list here that I think is the most shocking for our taste? It's an album I really like, but I didn't mention Aqualung.
Mm,
And that was your number two, I think.
yes, it was.
So I like that album, but it, there's there's two or three Jethro Tull albums I like better. So those will come later. Anyway, thank you, and to everyone watching, I'm on Patreon, Instagram, Facebook. I got the links, and we'll put a link um, to the Spotify playlist here. We really appreciate your hanging out. If you want to support me, I would really appreciate that. Hit the like or subscribe button. And we always enjoy reading your comments. We ask that they be nice, but they can be honest and they can be confrontational. That doesn't matter. We don't mind criticism, even though we're right. No, I'm just kidding. So, well, thanks for joining me, Professor. I loved it.
Thank you for hosting me. And we'll see you later on when we do 72 and 73.
Okay, and I've already got them finished, so I'm ready to go. And
So do I.
anyway, as we say here in Bonita, Mexico, buen dia.